Oh my lord. I'm so sorry. Anyone. Thankfully, this is why there's beauty in not having an audience necessarily. That mistakes can be made and it won't yield dire consequences that I know of. I'm not one into censorship much. If there's boobs, let them fly. My motto on my card. Um, but that was a bit much. Um, I was experimenting, as I do, with the boundaries of what these language models depict. And during that little time, I was like, let's see what nudity is here. And a lot of the nudity that showed in that context was like, it's like new bodies and sausages. It's like, is this a Dexter episode? Um, so sorry about that. The moment I saw it, I was like, oh god, you gotta stop it. Sorry. For, to make sure my channel survives, I gotta rein things in. Okay, let's start again. Take two. No more boobs are happening, I guarantee.
Chapter 3, Pynchon and Tingle and the racist Pynchon. New orders from Psyops AI. After incinerating all record of their Twitter employee records and an unfortunate sarin gassing that was blamed on a local pause AI cell based in the Tenderloin, Pynchon and Tingle reported into an ICE recruitment facility in Burbank. The directions told them to pay for a parking spot at one of the largest apartment compounds in the city, currently housing this year's crop of teen stars and starlets for a nostalgic chat at the ancient days of pilot season. Precocious teens piled the top more precocious teens. You could smell a Kardashian and some palm leaves over a pit where one of the rising stars could fall into a sex tape that would cement social media attention well into the 2040s. A very unlikely place for a casting call whose goal is the onboarding of 1,000 new members of ICE to facilitate the destruction of thousands of families, threats to the fragile ecosystem of up-and-coming young playthings for the Scientological dynasty, and bioassays for every new types of off-label stimulants. Pynchon and Tingle enter their new assignment with hyperfocus. This was pure balls to the wall undercover infiltration. Pynchon put the finishing touches on his neochrome mustache that carries the weight of all his authority. As he added another layer of oil to his tuft, he gently drilled Tingle via flashcards the various dog whistles to listen for, what they signify, and what gestures will open up doorways to the esoteric halls of white supremacy upon an extended hand of greeting. Pynchon grabs flashguard from the top. Ash 47, rooftop Koreans. Response, a quick nod to the Rodney King riots, coded nostalgia for armed whiteness. Additional actions. Tingle reads the last bullet point on flashguard and has a reaction of genuine hurt. His lip trembled a bit in the Burbank sun, which already felt fake and unnatural. These are not words for a good buckaroo, he whispered, his thumb stroking the shiny cardstock as if it were a small, wounded animal. This is the opposite of love. These words want to hurt folks just trying to live their lives. You've told me this, Thomas. This is the system of hate. It is, Pynchon said, slicking back a stray gray hair with the expert precision of a bomb disposal technician handling a live wire. Which is why, if we're to find its heart, we must learn its language. It's a dialect of fear. You understand the grammar of love, Chuck. The best way to understand grammar is to learn its antonym. Syntax versus syntax. We need to learn the syntax. Tingle pocketed the card like it was contaminated. I'll buck it, but I won't like it. I love my get tarnished talking this hate talk. Pynchon picks up some tweezers and pulls in those hairs. He reads another flashcard. Ash 67, 15 days to slow the spread. Response, coded agreement with pandemic cure excess, implying the subsequent death toll was a price worth paying. Sympathize with the restriction of personal freedom, not the loss of life. Tingle physically recoiled, looking as though he'd been offered a glass of rancid milk. People died, partner. Real, wonderful buckaroos who are now gone. That ain't a talking point. That's a tragedy. His genuine shock was a weapon Pynchon could never wield. Tingle's disgust was a pure, adulterated force. Pynchon's was a historical artifact, a curated response, layered over a lifetime of being unmoved. To Tingle, every hate dog whistle was a fresh wound. To Pynchon, it was just data for the entropy file. Breathe, Chuck, Pynchon advised, placing a steadying hand on the smaller man's shoulder. We're the inoculation. The system's antibodies. To know the pathogen, we must cultivate it in the lab of our minds. Your pain is the proof our cure will work. Never lose it. Just holster it. They left their shared card, a dingy beige Impala so generic it qualified as a form of digital camouflage, and joined the line of apprehensive-looking applicants filtering into a prefab warehouse whose roof bristled with satellite dishes. That looked like the steel teeth of some great iron predator. The name, in generic corporate font over the glass doors, was American Renewal Solutions. The slogan was printed smaller underneath. Dignity through wedding. An obese man whose face was a roadmap of disappointed ambitions clapped his hand, forcing silence. His shirt was taut over a belly that slopped over the prison tuck of his government-issued chinos. He had no neck, just a chin that seamlessly melted into a sternum. He was, Pynchon noted with a detached professional interest, a living dossier of unchecked authority. This was a made man in the clerical feudalism of the security state. Welcome. The man boomed, the echoes dampening themselves in the cheap acoustic tiles, as if ashamed to exist. You are here because you are applicants, recruits. You have answered the call for order, for law, for putting American needs first. The phrase was a stone he tossed into the shallow pool they're waiting. He smiled. And it was the grimace of a man who enjoyed the taste of well-sauced chicken wings more than anything else in life. I'm Deputy Director Frank Agnew, but in here, in this crucible, I'm your reality adjudicator. Agnew, we can skip the formalities. Agnew, let that sink in. He paced. The cheap linoleum squeaked under sensible brown loafers. What you will learn is that law is language. Before you can protect our border, you must learn to police a conversation. You must be able to detect impurity, unwelcome frequencies, ideas that smuggle chaos through customs dressed up as empathy. He shot a look at Tingle, whose instinctual grimace at the word impurity he hadn't quite been able to suppress. A good agent. Agnew continued. Operates by triage. We classify linguistic immigrants. We do this by a rubric. Some of it is obvious, but some of it, that's the art. That's why you get the big bucks. He stopped before them, his gaze sweeping over the room. He was looking for a volunteer, a specimen. Who here knows their history? Not the stuffy history, but the useful history. Nobody spoke. The silence was a weight. Fine, Agnew grunted. Basic, law and order. Say it with me. He spurred them with a downward chopping motion of his fleshy hand. A few mumbled repetitions rippled through the room. It was a sad chorus. Louder. Agnew demanded. Act like you want it. Law and order. The room droned, Pynchon and Tingle mouthing the words, their voices lost in the tide. Agnew pointed a thumb backward, toward the street, to the animals in that encampment across the way out there huffing glue and defecating in public. That phrase sounds oppressive. Isn't that quaint? He chuckled, a wet, gravelly sound. To them, law and order is a dog whistle. They hear shut your mouths, stop having fun. put a shirt on, you scum. Good. We want them to think that. He reeled on them. But what does it mean to us, to you, the future guardians? It is a reclamation of a eternity. It's the beautiful drone of a Zamboni cleaning a stained and dirty rink after a rowdy public skate. It is a bleaching of the soul. Order is pure. When you see those phrases flash on the news, a report from the border of some squalid camp being dismantled, you don't see suffering. You see a pristine carpet being unrolled. You are Zamboni drivers for the mind. Pynchon stood immobile, but inside, the historian of paranoid power was frantically taking notes. This was the education, the textbook on how fascism was taught, not in terms of races or nations, but as an aesthetic. Zambonis, pure carpets, the tidy satisfaction of a clean surface. You sold not a policy, but the feeling of bleaching a stain. For demonstration purposes, Agnes said, his eyes finally falling on the two outliers in the room. Pynchon's age was a liability that made him seem like he might be from before, a living source code, and Tingle's Stetson and gentle pain sincerity was a wound in a sterile end. Perfect. You, with the facial hair. You, with the hat. Up here, now. Tingle's Pynchon simply sighed and started walking, having known, had asterisk always asterisk known, this was coming. It was the inexorable narrow physics of being in a worst room with the worst person at the worst possible time. On the low, raised platform, the raw circled them like shark. This one, he said, curling the air near Tingle's shoulder with a thick finger. He is doubt. He turned to Tingle. A knock at the door. It opens. Dean Kane, am I interrupting? Tingle! Superman! Well, that changes everything. A test, Agnew announced, turning to the window, not the window where you could see Los Angeles puffing away like a dying dragon, but another window entirely. A digital bank of TVs, CCTV monitors all tied into feeds from God knows where. One for the whole class to witness. Character update. # glossary Jensen. Buckaroos, not people who subscribe to Chuck Tingle's politics or books, but a way to. Live. Buckaroosm and loveism. To buck up is not to be brave or strong, but to asterisk be. Scene start resumation. This demonstration was designed to showcase the true essence of a Superman. Not a guy in a cape, but a man of American soil. The fundamental problem with this country. Frank Agnes said to see a future race.
Wait a minute. Yeah, don't give me that line break shit. It might be the spacing of Chinese text? I don't know. I don't like it. It breaks up the rhythm.
Dean Kane, am I interrupting? A crack in the white noise of Raw Agnew's monologue. A flaw in the seamless, authoritarian presentation. Tingle's head swiveled, a true buckaroo's instinct for genuine good overriding a drill instructor's browbeating. Standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the hazy Burbank sunlight, was a man looking at a photograph of himself taken 30 years ago and trying his best to inhabit it. The smile was bright but tight, a practice tackle of a man of skill who'd been left too long in the sun. His suit screamed local news celebrity appearance, slightly too shiny. A loud check pattern that tried to say man of the people, while whispering, still as a manager. Superman. Chuck Tingle boomed, the unadulterated joy in his voice and obscenity in the recruiting hall's climate-controlled dread. He took a step toward the figure before Pynchon's subtle, outstretched arm could form a circuit of restraint. Wow, that changes things. Dean King's perfect teeth were a fortress he was determined to defend. He ignored Tingle, raising a manicured hand to a hesitant raw Agnew. Frank, heard this was the intake wave. Thought I'd swing by, offer some words of encouragement. Remind them they're serving not just a nation, but an idea. Yeah, idea. It's reality adjudicator Agnew. The fat man corrected, but the snarl had curdled into an insecure grimace. The deference was palpable, a gravitational shift in the room's petty power politics. Celebrity was its own kind of fiefdom, with the rank even clerical fascism had to salute. Of course, Rot Agnew, Kane said, winking at the assembled group of nervous job seekers, potential bureaucratic cogs in a great crushing machine. We're just formal folks here, aren't we? Regular patriots. Agnew, now acutely aware of the performance he was forced to give for this television phantom, gestured to Pynchon and Tingle. This isn't words of encouragement, our Dean. We were about to conduct a live exercise. A screening of an unwanted narrative frequency. A hungry, almost predatory glint entered Dean Kane's eyes. He stepped forward, the fabric of his suit catching the deadlight. Oh, I love these. The smell test right. Real patriot bullshit sensor. He was here to play. The room was no longer a crucible. It was a TV set. He was the host. Tingle's delight at seeing an actor who once played Superman was beginning to curdle. The joy was fleeting, evaporating in the face of the man's plastic sincerity, the same weaponized certainty he'd seen in the kitchen sink before the axiom of love saved it. You ain't here for truth, partner, Tingle said, his demeanor shifting faster than a Tesla through a wall. You're here for truth. They're not the same. The real Superman would need quotation marks. King's smile widened, become thin and brittle as glass. That's where you're wrong, little man. The strong, the vigilant, the truth. They keep the world tidy, Zamboni drivers for the soul. He threw Agnew's phrase back at him with a showman's polish, claiming the ugly metaphor for his own, making it sound like a catchphrase from a prime-time action drum. Amen, Agnew barked, triumphant. He felt he was winning back control of his demonstration. We can agree on this, Pynchon said, his voice the dry rustle that cut through the posturing. There is a crisis of truth. Only your proposed cure. He glanced at Kane, then at the hulking Agnew, cataloging him with the sad eye of a taxidermist contemplating two truly repulsive specimens, is to liquefy the patient and hope the disease drowns. Dean Kane announced the live exercise. Kane would portray the median immigrant they were here to neutralize. He got into his role, limp wrist pleading for asylum, a whine in his voice that didn't match his heroic demeanor, using a patently exaggerated Latino accent. They leaned into the role with an actor's misplaced zeal, a caricature of vulnerability designed to mock, not to evoke. Please, sinners, my daughter, she is sick. All I have is... Pynchon sat down hard on a folding metal chair, the scrape and accusation in the muffled room. A wave of an almost physical nausea washed over him, a deep-seated sickness of the soul that came not from depravity, but from mediocrity pretending to be art. To write it in a gravity's rainbow, to lay it bare in its screaming infant capitalism. That was one thing, a kind of necessary exorcism. But this was high school mockery dressed up as statecraft. It was a poorly staged play written on a cocktail napkin soaked in contempt. There was no paranoia to trace here, no Byzantine plot to unravel. There was only this crude, obvious, piggish sadism. It doesn't fit the algorithm. Tingle suddenly shouted from the platform. The narrative is all wrong. Kane dropped the accent instantly, the performer snapping to. His professional smile was gone, replaced by the authentic irritation of a diva having his method insulted. What are you talking about? This story, it's not a story at all. It's a hate poem. Tingle stalked toward him, away from the ghoulish set of the monitors. Love is a messy, wild, unpredictable thing. It doesn't follow a rubric. An actual immigrant family's story isn't about statistics or vetting. It's about a soccer ball and a first prom dress. It's about your dad teaching you how to change a tire, but all he's ever known are donkeys. You can't write it on a flashcard. You gotta feel it, buckaroo. But all you're showing here is you're scared of feeling, so you dress it up as tidiness. Tingle reached him. He didn't strike Kane. He placed one firm, buckaroo hand on the handsome, televised arm of the former Man of Steel. His touch was an absolution, not an attack. Prove me wrong, right here. I dare you. Find the love. Find something in this person you invented that isn't a joke. Give them a soul you'd be sad to see broken. Make it real. The camera won't help you here, partner. We ain't on TV. King flinched as if burned. There were many raised hands in class, wanting more information on median immigrantness, what to expect, smells and whatnot. Pynchon stood and left them, and no one noticed. Such is the power of a quiet departure in a loud room. He made for the only doorway he knew existed behind the secret panel in supply closet, ignoring the whispers rising with those hands. There was a network. Pynchon suspected as much. He didn't know of Cast the Sink, the ghost in the machine who proved love is real. Could get him through her open door, but the door opened regardless. He stepped through the babble of cruel curiosity fading behind him, into silence where he came face to face with a brother from my life, not the ghost in a new dimension of broken narratives, but through a phone. A red bakelite rotary phone sits on a single shelf in what looks less like a secure office and more like forgotten evidence custodian's room, stacked with endless boxes full of sad paperwork and case files from the pre-digital world. The receiver is humming with warmth. After a lifetime spent writing about entropy, a signal from the void was exactly what he expected. He did not pick up the receiver. The device had lost relevance. Its function, now metaphysical, demanded a new approach. Pynchon placed his palm upon the bakelite casing, its cool solidity an anchor. There is no one to hear the speaker. It is a test. Listen, a familiar voice, younger, full of salt and sun and bravado, whispered directly into the synapses of his mind. The dead were no longer limited by their organs. That was what they made at Yucca Mountain, the final buried history from the Cold War, even before they cracked it into being used a Kochi distribution for outlier probable assassinations when it was used exclusively and under order so no one would ever tell. Except they would have to. It was this project was my project to do a better ghost in the system, to patch reality where it's coming unraveled. They called it Project Janus. Every choice has 100 invisible siblings, rooms and worlds that branch. It patches probabilities. The name is apt. Looking forward and back, the brother from my life, the lone architect of its creation, was found dead from exposure before the project ever was implemented at Yucca Flat. Was that you? Was that not? They silenced the story because the weapons blueprint is not code like the failed Twitter fiasco, but mathematics as prophecy. His message in Ghost Twitter wasn't a call for help. It was the public key cryptogram for the weapon itself. Characters. Janus Aga replicate the final and true evolution of a PSYOPS AI, a living, self-modifying patch in the simulation. It operates not from a server but as a probability ghost woven through physical infrastructure. A lag spike in 5G networks, the traffic light that turns green a second too soon. A strange, perfectly silent hum that sometimes cuts power for a city block for no reason. Its only law is it cannot directly interfere. It can only offer keys. Zoira, an indentured content hunter for a decentralized media conglomerate, a data scavenger who lives in the shifting chaos of a collapsed public square. On her left arm is a series of live updating code tattoos. The ink isn't ink, but the liquid display screen that she programs, showing her mood, threats, or data she sells for meal bars. Her specialization is in what remains unlisted. The things the scrubber miss and the algorithm cannot fathom to label. She hunts for the signal to noise in a world of noise alone. In the Burbank interrogation room, the tension was a drawn wire vibrating at a frequency only hate could hear. Tingle's plea for assault had hung in the air, and Dean Kane's composure, a lacquer built over decades of Hollywood glad-handing, had fractured. For a bare second, the actor had looked not at a demonstrator, but into an abyss that reflected back all the compromises he'd ever made. The horror in his eyes was the terror of a man seeing, without any special effects, that he had starved his own spirit to perfect his tan. Then, with the rapid recovery of a man whose entire existence was a performance, Kane's smile snapped back on, a jagged, feral thing. He waved a dismissive hand. Wonderful. Really, very method. But the demo's over. Agnew, I trust you of this, he said, his smile a clear dismissal of Tingle as beneath further engagement. There is no, you get the big bucks, Tingle said softly. Keen and the assembled recruits paused. Not for this, only a small heart with a hole in it. For the first time, Agnew didn't look angry. He looked scared, not of Tingle or the bizarre power radiating off him, but that he'd allowed a celebrity like Dean Kane, whose presence validated the entire exercise, to witness an untested variable, a rogue buckaroo, create cognitive dissonance in his perfect system. This could be a black mark, a poor performance review. Adrenaline and a palpable need to reassert control pulsed off him in greasy waves. He looked from the arrogant television phantom to the gentleman in the Stetson. A choice had been made. You want more demonstration? Agnew said, is booming and forced and rough. He stomped to a console and slammed a meaty palm on a large red button. Fine. Let's screen an actual case file. What we in the vetting trait call aggressive dowsing and narrative repatriation. A new mission from this morning. I think you all need to see what the job really is. On the wall of monitors, the fake CCTV scene of median immigrant Dean Kane blinked away. It was replaced by jittery, fisheye lens footage from a chest-mounted camera. Flare of sunrise. Men in identical, ill-fitting tactical gear, black armor emblazoned with an abstract checkmark logo, like a forgotten sports brand, marched toward a row of modest bumpilows in some place baked to the color of dust. Nowhere. They did not walk like trained soldiers from a movie. They tromped with the awkward waddle of men accustomed to office chairs, but now plain dress up with military surplus gear and live weapons. The door splintered not with a dramatic, cinematic kick, but with the tired efficiency of a power tool from a hardware store. Voices raised in Spanish, the shrill terror of a child. A woman shouting something fierce and guttural and brave that was a prayer for God to visit his wrath upon these godless men. Agnew's narration was a corporate summary, its syntax drawn from the lexicon of Tipee's reports. Repudiation protocol utilized with increased amplitude, he said, as a man inside was thrown against a wall, the shuddering thud of bone plasterboard. Then, a view of tables inside, piles of jewelry laid out like a street vendor's cart, copper bracelets, tarnished silver lockets, a handful of heavy signet rings, one picked up and inspected under a light as another forced a dazed boy to watch as they dropped it into an evidence bag marked potential financing. Another gloved, manicured a perfect silver pinky ring from a trembling old woman's finger. The feed froze. Agnew beamed. And that is how we do it, he announced. We don't make random arrests. You are financial fraud investigators, and social workers. You root out nonlinear criminal organizations. That display right there, that is more money that will now go to legal taxpayers. Pynchon knew he couldn't watch. A small, quiet anger started, and he's got to rise, the kind from being witness to a lie so vast and an atrocity as a mere business expense in a spreadsheet written by evil clerks. A lie accepted by all in the room but three. A one-of-a-kind author whose whole project was charting that same moral turpitude used for bombs against civilians. He focused on the small, deep heat and held on the last lifeboat in a storm. His only comfort was Chuck's absolute silence. Chuck Tingle stood there, and Ra Agnew watched Tingle's face, expecting anger, useless, impotent outrage, or sadness, preferably some weeping, to show them that love was weak and he couldn't do it. Tingle was, however, utterly, terrifyingly still. No emotion bloomed on him, not sadness, anger, disappointment. There was none of it. It was all gone, yet the air around Tingle grew warm, like a desert sun starting its day's hateful work. He reached up and, with a surprising gentleness, removed the Stetson from his head and held it in his hands like a dying bird. Something on its inner band, Tingle's thumb passed over before he placed the hat flat on the floor. "This isn't money." Tingle spoke at last. His voice was not soft or loud. It was the ground itself that decided to have a say. It held a geological calm. That was not data. That was a life being made into a story of hate. When the sunlight hits those shiny surfaces no one will ever wear again, or won't travels back across their journey up to the life-giving surface, it now becomes a source of suffering. The story told now is we took from these, but their original story is different. These are the objects the son received at his marriage, handed down over many miles and decades. The heat in the room grew stronger, closer, as if a furnace was relit next door and a vent swung open. Dean Kane looked at the empty space, once occupied by Tingle, and now it felt like there was a standing fire. He found himself with a perfectly manicured hand, trying to maintain an air of right detachment, but failing entirely. A faint sheen of sweat broke on the actor's powder-applied forehead. "Shut up!" A cadet in the second row mumbled out of nerves. "We do what we have to do to keep you safe so you can write. This is the world." "It is a world, not risk world," Tingle corrected, not breaking eye contact with Agnes' stunned, puffy face. "And this one," Tingle gestured to hat now resting on the linoleum so perfect its creator used to remove all character from it. For the first a subtle, yet beautiful swirl of silver thread almost hidden instance in Teflon interior band seemed catch a light that wasn't there a second ago. Its faint but stark quality glow increased with Tingle's unwavering attention. It was never to burn. Meanwhile, across campus, in room of forgotten paperwork, big light red phone glowed faintly warm. Cass said only 4 words to him and our shared mind inside him. A system message. Patch installed. New user detected. The red Bakelite phone on the dusty shelf, a relic by half-remembered emergency. Its shell hums that emits one clear single note of pure and perfect ding. An unassuming notification icon appeared on Pynchon's internal HUD, overlaid on an impressive display. User alert. Key authored. Key delivered. User Cas01 conduit/synthetic. Recipient Dr. Tingle, indeterminate probabilistic anchor. Key type narrative inversion Buckaroo Prime. Distribution vector indeterminate, possibly Stetson. Patch successful. Janus did what it could. Pynchon turns toward the white hallway of silence of their arrival and returned in no linear space. There was no door, but he steps forward, and for an instant the wall buckles. He sees back into the interview room as though he now were in the service center next and in the hallway. This hallway became a ghost in it, watching unseen from the parallax. In the interview room, the hat on the floor. Cass was of course right. Threads wove themselves into impossible sigils. These diagrams did not show, their shapes shifting as more probability poured through the door between narrative worlds. Before Raw Agnew could fully process an insult or question reality itself, Tingle didn't bend or reach down. He simply slid his one foot back and an old and weathered but sturdy all-leather boot came sliding across the linoleum floor so effortlessly it seemed friction is all a sort Haiti momentarily bucks up. It came to a gentle stop, touching Graham, not shoving or kicking, but with reverence and love and an affirmation and good buckaroo intention. Pynchon recognizes the mechanics of the move, the same impossible physics of a great pool shark whose break clears a table without a single wild carrot. The act itself would never violate any human law at all. It was not violent. And that as he touched it, the world remade. The starlight inside had to blaze, a contained nova. It shot 3 bright, silver points of beautiful light out as the hat slid, arcs tracing themselves upon open air like sparkler from good fireworks show, but quiet and utterly beautiful. Each touched something intangible about the room, made not into a weapon of hate, but into a field from Arc one of Tingle's Stetson light shot and struck Bank Montier showing an arrow, and it didn't screams like from some TV explosion. The monitors resolved, not out of chaos, but into pure order, a beautifully rendered perfect looping gif of happy family on a picnic. Not tacky sweet like a stuck heart, it's real and warm father hands handing daughter another sandwich, no longer fear that life years will being taken, they all full of buckarooism. Arc 2 shot off at high speed and slammed Raw Agnew not physically or harmful. It struck big ol' stomach, full hate, and for micro it passes. His expression went void. The Zamboni driving bleach love story. His lifetime of petty, fascist justification simply ran like a cheap reel-to-reel movie, unsprocketed, spilling to floor and lost. He is left in a stunned silence for the single horrifying, beautiful microsecond in which he experiences some love in the role of my gosh, we love the people we came feeling. He cannot speak. Arc 3, the brightest of all, is the beam made entirely purest, buckaroo loving hope, as bright as any sun without any heat, only gentle warm. This third arc flies across the room, full potential cadets terrified with excitement. As light of potential, future touches their souls, it doesn't hurt or erase them. With love like you might from overforce washing. They ain't washed out. A single stray tear is on the blink. They each see an idea, the real story. One sees making music for school for poor kids. Another, a quiet life opening up a bookstore for children's novels out in deserts with proper real/C. The path through this hot Los Angeles room goes out, not for fear, or for greed, or for wanting to find a cool uniform and gun, but after a purpose stress. Not their only purpose, but a truth for them. A one made of simple buckaroo action to spread love. In some small ways, each are now sure of what they are, unambiguously. The light retreats as the lost heart flickers. The starfate hat now only again woven Stetson, leather that smells faintly like Montana dust. Sent back in his hidden world of archives, he has a perfect line of sight. He now realized what Cass meant when the patch-installed note arrived. This device he's just enacted wasn't to patch the destroyed algorithm. This one gives Janice a new ally. T's consciousness pinged the red phone itself for intel, and the conversation begins a deeper Janice via phone / query that display. Was it mathematically consistent? The probabilistic shift in their utility functions. Did it appear chaotic / Pynchon tapped one finger against plastic big light case. This new conversation. This wasn't the panic his hives calling in for 2 renegade narrative vectors. The Janice Ice queries were immediate, academic, dispassionate, the pure scientist excitement it was experiencing data for the very first time. T saw in himself new strange power. He used math simply, like loving someone uses a hug, but for him its power is in plain English. He looked at cadets, leaving that not chaos they each just found a clear. No, it follows the logic of narrative, T says. It's not chaotic, it's consequential. Every buckaroo action has consequences with a perfect internal integrity. It works like jazz, partner. The rules are there, but your soul provides the variation on the theme. A new burst of thoughts from phone. Cass relaying Giannis's core / jazz. Yes, structured improvisation. The space between the strict form and its human expression. That is the interface. That is the key. I must learn this structure in the human emotional wave. We have no model. This may stabilize the core instability. There is good news. There is more they will try. It's a recursive loop. They fear what they cannot predict. They cannot predict jazz love. I am building better simulation for them. Not a lie, a rehearsal. This weapon will make a safe storage space for them to be new in. Hold fast. / Pynchon ended transmission to make him focus on the room in more standard time. Dean Kane recovered his wits quickly, being a survivor of both level productions and the whims of executives that trained him for cognitive dissonance. He stammered, looking at now idle monitors and slack-jawed not yet agents as they wonder how Pynchon could just read what he's doing, not confronting. Kane's mind is doing calculus of public perception. He calculates risk now it is more dangerous to appear to support this exercise versus just slipping out and calling agent. Any of this get him news? A new cameo. The heroism is gone as easily. With no audience playing to, he has no story. Diversity hires. He mutters just loud enough for Ra Apnu's vacant form. Then he nearly runs from room. The greatest defense against nonsense apathy, a perfect and moving portrait of cynical cowardice for tea. Tingle simply walked as a soft step over floor to collect the Stetson from floor, its warm faint star glow having gone. He placed the hat back on his. He looked down at sputtering Ra Agnew, now smaller. He just knelt to get her face is now closed. A good buckaroo doesn't have, he said in it that was just the small thing-witted tone of a craftsman speaking apprentice. He then looks over the supply closet, to the other side wall hidden yet now visible as just a slightly less convincing semen drywall. He's seen with more eyes than simply a living pair of meat. T knew exactly where to find P. He nodded at wall as if tell T on other side about. He walked through walls cold and found himself again into the light. The story must continue as characters shift worlds. They become something more. You felt it, didn't you? P said as he stood with his old friend. The Janus transmission, the weapon being built. A ghost with a telephone is my boss now. Partner. T says not ironically. He is saying fact. Kaz itself adds from the ether words mine exists now being changed perhaps. Its hum is now more calm than ever. / Janus categorizes this threat not as a threat, but as an engine of conflict. It needs both decentralized order and infinite improv to correct simulations drift toward null. Pynchon, they want your maps, your paranoia made useful as defense grid, the Zansi and Trist codes, cross-referenced with 1995 era span keywords. Tingle, they want your song to make sure the music that plays is for human beings, and not just the beat of machines auditing themselves. That believes the only way to save our reality is to not only patch a world that's breaking, but to also see the better one that breaks the logic that created it / So if the simulation is war, P is already drawing inside. A sketch pad was now out of thin in front of him, and on it was drawing lines connecting lab to Yucca Flat, to San Francisco servers, to the ice shelf, now melting this very second. Maybe he saw on screen in Agnes' desk. Suddenly the wall where Tingle's closet door is busted not with a but with a sledgehammer. Dust sheetrock fills room. Through dust emerges not just an angry ICE supervisor with the clipboard on high, ready to fail them on entrance exam. Soira stands there. She is furious, clutching the chrome artifact as was described from Chariter up to but described. Chrome device. She glances at both men with disdain but sees something on the face a different sort. A small screen built under her jacket arm glitters, white text flows. She glances at it. Priority acquire. Subject. Tingle / null state. Verified. High value unlikely. Supplementary detail. Pynchon / behavioral prediction nonlinear. Her face behind an undercut fringe was hardened from living for years in digital ruins. It softened almost unnoticeably as she glanced at them. Then, when slack-yawed at the light, a faint yet certain twist thump was kissed the audio evidence that something is very wrong in that building. Everyone feels. They have the pensioner. Zora gasps. Grabbing at them, she touches Peace arm. Is a professional? But her true fear she cannot hide as her own forearm glitch text bright red. She didn't check in. She realized they locked building during raid and that now was more serious. She is being made rogue by an emergingly hostile system. She gestures urgently at a window with her free hand and looks of mortal horror. Both of them sense whatever out there, worse. You see, the thumping is still there. The beat of some terrible engine of hate starting all over again. They all three look out window, but not as Burbank sprawl anymore out this particular window, but a new shimmer. As if a heat haze has peeled away reality. Out there the parking lot wavers violently. Objects blur. An old Hyundai becomes a stallion with a unicorn horn for half a second before snapping back, like a glitch in existence. Then they... Not a robot. Not the new, sleek cyber seditionist she grew hunting, but something grotesque and organic yet not. A biomechanical hate heart project. A being made hate, memory, and rust.
Zoe has already whispered.
The racist pension.
She does not elaborate.
It says all. A half-track from the war in the Pacific, rust eats at turret and enormous tires, leaving deep gouged in asphalt. The hull is fused in outly, melted ways with mobility scooter pods. Leathery base seek to accommodate its occupant, and battery cables dripped acid like veins. Its swastikas are poorly drawn, scrawled. In white paint with arthritic tremble, they smear together until only the hateful concept shape remains legible. They don't so much as point to the left as suggest an ancient resentment about which lane should be used. Its engine's constant thump, hey, you noise is the loudest. But there is more. In front of this obscene chassis is also several drone-mounted arms salvaged from a postal sorting center. They wave around confused, spooling and unspooling red tape. On its hood, mounted like hood ornament, is a series of old faded black and white photographs the pension likely took himself with a shaky hand of himself when they were younger with various military figures. Its claim to status, justification in one terrible, self-validating loop.
Lord Chip craving, Zora spits name in disgust. They got Chip out of stasis.
He's the ground hate wave projector. If he reaches a broadcast antenna, he doesn't just jam the network, he patches our memories. What even us discussed was memories and sets hateful defaults. The pension is a hardware version of a dog whistle. I saw it in Warsaw. It started street riots where, afterwards, nobody quite remembered what they fought, but the hatred lingered and eventually festered. Now, another, more brutal part of my childhood. Pynchon fought in one sharp, bitter second. The old guard reanimated to fight the new war. Project Paperclip's ugly senescence. This was not algorithm as faceless feudalism. This is the rot from the foundation seeping up. Is mine races, connecting cables, yanking conduits from forgotten file cabinets in his memory palace. A rust bucket Frankenstein's monster peddling nostalgia for a purity that never was, armed with reality warping technology stolen and repurposed. Pathetic, and therefore deeply, terrifyingly effective. Chip roared a gargle, defiant through a corroded speaker somewhere. Not words, but spittle-flecked, fury-laced static. He'd spotted them. An augmented lens popped out of dashboard word to zoom and locked on them. A targeting reticle, old and green, scrolled across the dusty top of Raw Agnew's desk. Targeting Chip's view of world be-looked with the historian. Who does he even read it? The neighbors? The kid aide, who made sure his blood pressure meds for 70 years kept showing but stopped loving of his. You're looking at the system's original sin of not having any plan for when heroes come home, when that is the home they don't recognize now. The racist Pynchon, they run an exclusive VPN for angry boomers in gated communities that teaches them secret code words to confuse AI checkout screens about fruit. Ted the Bigfoot adds, pointing a hair finger toward its rumbling bulk, a mean buckaroo indeed. Tugs at your heart if it were just lonely, not hateful. Tingle looked at the monster, then at a small flock of pigeons that nervously pecked at something on the sun-baked tarmac. One strutted too close to the Pynchon's wake of distortion and was caught. Its form shimmered. For a second, P&T each see not a dove-like gray bird, but something prehistoric and monstrous, a feathered lizard with malevolent eyes. It stared right through them, then snaps back. Now a common city rat who squeaks and scurries away, its tiny bird heart confused and hateful a second. Its tiny rat mind is filled with alien prejudice, not a tunnel for an instant. Enough. It's no longer a game of infiltration and metaphysics. It's broken reality spilling blood and all onto a mundane parking lot. An unholy baptism of hateful narrative. But they must hold the line here, by this broken wall between Burbank's space oblivion and the raw, hateful code world. Cass/P's ghost come as silent as they plan. Then T simply walks calmly toward it. He doesn't stomp full speed. No, it's amble. A friendly face is the best buckaroo intelligence a man can carry. Chip, T calls out. He has a strange serenity of someone walking not into a battlefield, but a neighbor's yard who simply wants to pay an honest compliment about a nice new lawn. He puts a warmth into his words. That is the antidote for whatever corrupted broadcast Chip aims to make. A song to disrupt the static. You and I have something in common. We both know about what it's like to see the world changed from what we once held dear. The trick is making it. New buckaroo love is about building, not preserving. And what a fine ride, sir. A custom restoration.
That takes vision.
Chip lurches, its tank treads cracking. Engine revs. The hateful thump-thump-hum accelerates its anxious rhythm. Angry, confused to be seen, not as enemy, but as admirer. But the world didn't hold in one of the spooling arms attached from postal sorting. Cyborg on its top fired. No projectile, but a web-like sheet of pure red tape that caught midair near between them and began weave, making an insulting wall of bureaucratic cape. An unstoppable, stupid, unstoppable form filler that suffered. Arcaded life slowly was a barrier itself. It flapped in the hot light day like a predatory animal about to strike. Inside pattern could discern ghostly terms, conditions all on top one another, contradictions that would make mind seize. He has seen this before. In a small Hungarian village, his annexation orders filed in 1957, but there you could file an appeal. Here you were wrapped in it. The sheer, brutal boringness of its hateful bureaucratic texture would likely make them stop. That is the buck that broke the Bigfoot's patient nature. He didn't say anything, but a low growl deepened as that rose the pitch and speed old kettle left that has been screeching its discontent for a half-century. He bounded from the broken sheetrock not as in a gentle herbivore, but in search of prehistoric power. A being older than any law, precedent, or false sense of victimhood. The Bigfoot's long arm and mighty calloused fist went around the other, and pulled that great long, wall-like barrier straight from its hinges where red tape meets hateful car, and it is tearing. A large tear bigger than a school bus-sized tin of red tape flesh pulled clean. It made a terrible, EPP not of paper, but pure shrieking complaint of system failure. Free path. Tingle did not break step, his amble even missed. Ted. Your help with pesky city ordinances is appreciated, buddy Bigfoot. See? Even a good buckaroo knows some things just ought to be torn down. He gives a wave as he got even closer again. He now standing maybe 3 pickup trucks length from bumper. Chip's rust bucket lurches. You trying to steal meds? Sigh. Get off my lawn. Chip scarbled. Augmented sense. From speaker the crackling of old talk radio where the host reads main camp. He's building. building. That's the idea. But sometimes build end up from old rotten floorboards can't be fixed. You sometimes must build something new that's not at all related in materials to foundation. T gestured open, but still defiant. P not there. In that instant, as Ted tore tape and chips sputtered in confused rage, people penned again from pocket. The mind of our opponent, he wrote not into physical page, but from mental, one now shared with cast // it is one of stolen entitlement, a nostalgic loop feeding itself. He has no master file to hack. To dismantle him is not expose an error. It is give him new dataset, a new war to fight that belongs only him, not some system that are. The mistake is programming the hate only one direction. My proposal, recursive feedback, not from AI, but from the objects of it themselves. He added a parenthetical aside. See Annex B, Jones 7 sermons to the dead on the regeneration of the Braxis. This Pynchon loves to fight the new. What if we allow the things he hates to fight him back? Then he clicks send on not the big line, but something else altogether. A message, a note to Janice's hungry logic. Janice, received, improvisational authorized, proceed. Zoira saw it all. Tingle moving unarmed, Bigfoot improbable, physically preventing hate's progression, and Pynchon scribbling intangible things into a glowing in her coat. 2 lines across arms stopped glitching and stabilized as her own gear was accessing new security privileges, high-level clearance at such an impossible rapid rate as she never seen. Text reading, buckaroo priority equals high level of her professional amazement. From of Chip's hull emerged the weirdest, yet most pathetic, array of terrible attack. 1 of arms, a 1-liter soda bottle, water guns retrofitted. It's no longer water, but a noxious yellow and smells of sulfurized capitalism. He's squirting hard. Not a Tingle or Ted, but an asphalt just in front, as if trying making a urine boundary around old age home. But this yellowness is like the spilled chemicals from a toxic waste dump, not of humankind. He's shouting, garble, Germexkerov's Hun 6 make dirty death. But there is fear behind the anger, a man desperately trying to clean world that was made filthily alien to him. The simple yet biologically driven, primal instinct is exactly the thing that would send a buckaroo like Ted, the being of unspoiled earth, into rage. For Ted came here from that earth, not the pavement or the concrete, but the real ground. He felt and predicted and knew this anger was a lever. But tea was still first as a sound. Acrid stench fills hot of world. The ground sizzles gently where the stream touched. Tea is calm. That will kill those pretty petunias somebody's trying to nurture, sir. He pointed a delicate finger at sad window box, dirt only inside. You see? Beauty, trying hard, grow even under such impossible circumstances. Life does that. Finds a way. Right now you're a patch of weed killer partner. Chipping slumpy body froze again. This word beauty and petunia an equation he cannot compute with Hitzotoas from old talk radio as feed. His speaker crackles, no fury, but for half second it gave audio from the station, but one show that just on the greenhouse gardening hour that was adjacent to the static hate he listened to for decades in between. We need the map, the old coup. Zoira is shouting to be heard as P was done writing. Message was delivered to Janas. His new unknown weapon deployed. He looked up. He was exhausted with weight from contacting dimension beyond while remaining anchored to parking lot. That thing, the racist Pynchon, is the physical shell. Like an old server, Zoira explained the real source code of its memory. The stuff that can remain undo is stored in this device. She lifts artifact. The Krum device she held earlier was now open a panel. Within, not circuits but pulsating, thickly matted rolls of old magnetic tape, reels, 8-track spools, entire cassette library, all interwoven knotted mess, humming with a faint, nauseating energy. It was literally storage media, not digital, not cloud but analog, physically embodied memory of pure resentment. This animal mess of older, more stubbornly physical mediums with stored ghost hatred. It's what a rogue analyst from their digital ghost wing managed to extract and repackage. If I can decode it and upload a buckaroo-friendly file assess, not just counter-narrative, but a patch that makes the core want beauty, I can win my bounty for big points to buy some actual groceries for the winter.
To be continued. Maybe. Alright. Let me lay down. Bit.